Hi folks, I'm Gabby. I'm here as part of the community call for September. This is my first call, but I am here for you. So these calls are on the third Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We have these every month on the third Wednesday, and the next one is October 20th. If you'd like to reach out to us outside of this, we are available on GitHub and Twitter at the links above. For our agenda today, I'll give a brief info of WinUI as well as a hello if you don't quite recognize me. We'll be going over the WinUI roadmap and as well as a demo on the next WinUI 2.7. I'll also be introducing Colin, the CTO of Kahua, who has been modernizing his application with the Uno platform and WinUI. And as always, we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So, what is WinUI? WinUI is the native UI platform for Windows 10 and Windows 11, built for today's modern hardware and devices, offering the latest fluent styling. You can use it to build rich .NET and C++ apps for modern Windows devices. It powers the Windows and Xbox shell and many apps plus platforms like .NET MAUI and React Native for Windows. WinUI 2 is the second generation of the native UX stack in Windows, built for UWP apps. It consists of the scene graph layer and XAML framework in the OS and a library of fluent-based controls and styles that updates about trimestrally. WinUI 3 is a new third generation of the native UX stack in Windows, and it consolidates the UX technologies previously built into Windows into a single decoupled framework that ships as a part of the Windows App SDK. So hello. If you don't recognize me, this is my first month hosting the community call. I'm taking over from Anna, if you recognize her. I'm a PM on the WinUI team, and I focus on new controls for WinUI 2, such as info bar, goods feature, and most recently info badge. I'm looking, and it looks like our stream is a little bit laggy. So let's see if I can do anything to help fix that. A little bit on the back. Let's see. I'm gonna try and remove my second monitor, see if that helps. All right, let's see if that helps. Next, so first, some updates for the WinUI roadmap. This September, and what I'm about to announce to you is the next version of WinUI 2.7, which will include new features and controls that expand on Windows 11. And then coming in the next week or so, we have the WinApp SDK Preview 1, and so for WinUI 3, that's going to include bug fixes and stabilization. And then later in Q4, we'll also have the full Windows App SDK 1.0 coming soon. So a little bit about WinUI 2.7. What's upcoming is the horizontal orientation for color picker, as you can see here on the left. We're also working on the info badge control, which you can see here integrated with navigation view. And there's also some bug fixes stabilization from 2.6. So WinUI 2.7 will be available soon. Our release notes will be here at this aka.ms link. And then if you'd also like more information about Windows 11 design in general, you can view this link, and then our Figma toolkit for the design components will be updated here. So next, I'd like to show a demo of these new features. Just give me a second. Super. So first up, let's show info badge. Sweet. So you can see here, it's in the navigation view item. It'll show up in both top and left compact as well. By default, the attention style will pick up on the user's accent color, so mine right here is purple. But there's also a few others like informational, success, and critical that are preset. You can also add an info badge to any control, like this button here. Additionally, there's a numeric info badge that will dynamically update based on a code behind binding. Super. So if you have any questions on info badge, we also have our open issue and spec. So please feel free to reach out there. Let's see. And then the other feature update we have is for color picker. So color picker before was just in the vertical orientation, and now we've added the horizontal. So this is good for times when you want it to have a smaller footprint vertically. Super. So let's see. Going next. So next, that means I can hop right back in and introduce Colin. Colin Whitlatch, he is the CTO of Kahua, and they have been modernizing their project development software with WinUI and the Uno platform. So Colin, give me a moment, and then you can start sharing your screen and coming off mute. Super. Awesome. I see you. I see your PowerPoint. I don't yet see you. But I think you're good. Super.
All right, we'll see if we get the video going while we're rolling.
We're rolling. Great.
All right, great. So you see our PowerPoint. So just a little bit about us before we get to a quick demo. And let's see. My PowerPoint isn't freezing on me, but we'll get there. There we go. All right, so Kahua, very high level, we are a collaborative business application platform. We allow you to build line of business apps, which may be internal, or they may be for sharing amongst companies. We are industry agnostic, meaning we don't have code specific to any one vertical, such as construction, healthcare, education. Everything is done through metadata, and I'll get to that in a little bit at the bottom. We're low code, but when you work with Kahua, that code is actually metadata in our definition language, which it's built with a graphical tool called KBuilder. And to date, we have over 1,200 applications. Some weeks we had 10, some weeks we had about 100, and they're developed by partners, customers, and Kahua alike. For our actual stack, we have what we call our cloud services, the private and public. And the private services is on hardware that we host, and the public is in the Azure data centers that we utilize around the world. And when folks work with Kahua, they're using what we call our client hosts. And traditionally, that has been our native hosts for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. But today, we're going to show you something we're bringing to web. And then for that app metadata, again, everything that happens in Kahua is done through our metadata provided by definition files. There's literally no code that you write. It's all in these definitions you build, KBuilder, push out, and our platform knows how to interpret it, and our hosts themselves know how to display it. Quickly, we have over 5,000 customers, but I wanted to put up a slide, show you some familiar names that are up there. Again, these numbers are growing by the week, which is a good thing. So let's get to the Kahua web host. The business need there is that while the native hosts work well, there's been a trend in the industry to really lock down software installs, and it's either just purely for security or it's just ease of use. So what Kahua needs to provide is a web host that's going to work with our platform, and the deployment model has to have no plugins, no extensions, no gimmicks. It needs to work in modern browsers without anything at all. We need to provide accessibility. Things like the web content accessibility guidelines are important for almost everything we do. And then if you're in the government space, 508 and American Disabilities Act are important. So we need to support that with whatever we provide. On the code reuse front, we've been doing this for 10 years, and we have over 1.5 million lines of code in our hosts. And we need to reuse that because that's what does the business logic of our system. So if you're using it on the web, it needs to work the same as if it does on desktop. Localization you can implement it in a simple way, but it can get complex pretty quick. So whatever solution we use needs to support localization in a way that we can provide I think about 25 different languages now. And we're going to keep adding more as we go along. And then performance and security, they go hand in hand. They're paramount to what we do. The performance, it needs to be fast. People are working with what they expect to look and feel like a desktop application. But it has to be secure. The IT teams around the world, they need something they can trust. And if it's slow but secure, they're not going to be happy. If it's fast and not secure, definitely not going to be happy. So it needs to perform both well and be very secure. So along with that, last one, skill and tooling. We love C#, we love XAML, we love most of the actually love all the Microsoft stack. But we want to work with the tools we've been using for 10 years. So whatever we work with needs to be, allow our dev team just pick it up and roll with it. So on the web, we'll say this is not the first time we've done this. We actually started 10 years ago in Silverlight, and the last release of Silverlight was 2011. We actually took that a further 4 years. It suited us well. But the time came when you added features and functionality that Silverlight wasn't able to provide for us. So we transitioned to native Windows. So that's currently a WPF app, and it's something we still have today. But over the last several years, really started in 2018, we saw a push for just the native web or something that's web only. And to do that, we have a solution that is a terminal-based one that it's really Kahua hosts the WPF app and then provides a canvas that renders on the browser. And that is what we allow people to interact with that WPF app. It works surprisingly well, but there are limitations in that there's just a mismatch between what you're doing in a native desktop app and what you can do on the web, as well as we have to host that ourselves. And so the resources are all something we put in the cloud. And so every user that comes along is going to be requiring CPU, memory, and disk space. So we still have that up until just about 2 weeks from now, which gets us 2021. We're introducing Kahua for Web, which is powered by the UNO platform. And before I get to a demo of that, just want to briefly go over the technology here. For those that aren't familiar, you can do that center box as the browser itself. The DOM is what we use to render the Kahua host to the screen. That is outside of WASM, something you interrupt with JavaScript. But everything else is running under WASM. That includes all of our code, the 1.5 million lines. There's a .NET runtime in there. There's WinUI. There's Windows Toolkit. And it is all powered by the UNO platform, which does a lot. Jerome is on here. He can tell you a whole lot more, maybe through the Q&A, but it glues all this together, generates the WASM, gets everything. It is the runtime. It's what's interfacing with the JavaScript to get things on screen. So with that, I'm going to head to my demo. And if we can see that. Just wanted to, I skipped past the boring part of getting into sign in. I will say we started this this journey over a year ago by first getting our core low level 1.5 million lines of code working without a UI, just headless. Got things all over to .NET Standard. I've been working on that for many years since we saw WebAssembly coming up. And once we got past that, the next thing we did talk to Microsoft, and we did a pilot with the consulting team to just put together something that showed how would it work with the localization, how would it work with just working with XAML and with UNO. So we put that together and stubbed out just the sign in, and worked really well. We were very impressed. It covered all the boxes that I was talking about earlier. And now we have a full-fledged application. And then our 1.0, as I was mentioning, is coming out in a couple weeks. So just quickly to highlight some of the things that are in here. Again, we have over 1,200 applications, and it's the metadata that describes what's going to happen here. It's going to be what is the documents that you're working with, how's the data stored. If you navigate to a record, your detail, that's what we call it on the right-hand side, it's coming up here. What's displayed there, and that is where we get into the WinUI and the Windows Toolkit. Hopefully it's a little laggy here. And it's just standard form controls, but that's what we do. You know, we have this metadata language describing everything that's here. It can get pretty exotic with what you can do. Some is just standard CRUD. A lot of it could be some things like bidding and doing a bid room where you're proposing bids and responding to that and collecting files and working with CAD drawings and things like that. But this is all done with metadata that is fed into our host, and it absorbs that and then puts together all the visuals that are here. For more of the visual side of things, we have a lot of visuals within Kahua itself. I think we're about 150 different things you can put into these apps themselves. This here is media and used a lot. This is if you upload really any type of media, simply either photos or video. If we had a video here, we play it. But this, again, is just one of our core components that gets put in these apps. And if you go into edit, you'll see a lot more of the controls, things like date pickers, the smaller stuff, the buttons, but your sections, your panels, your combo boxes, all of this coming from WinUI and the toolkit. For other features that we have here that we've incorporated, we have a dashboard. Everybody loves dashboards. They're one, we have a lot of pre-canned ones. People love to build them. This particular one's just showing some charting components and then some lists. They're down here. With Kahua, you're free to build out your own. We have quite a few different widgets that you can put in here, different types of charts. And I will mention that the only third-party component that we're using outside of anything we're using from Microsoft is with Syncfusion. They're a good partner of ours and of Uno. They provide charting controls that they have brought into the Uno platform. So we utilize them here, and it's the only spot in our entire host that isn't part of the native stack. Moving over to File Manager, these have been around for a while and quite a few different products, and ours works just like Explorer. Screen should refresh here. And works in Folder Explorer, standard stuff. But to get to more of what Kahua does, want to show some of the features we have of our viewers. And let me make that a little bigger. What you have here is 3D rendering. And what folks will do with Kahua is they'll take these models, they'll upload them, and then we will take that apart, take the 3JS out, convert it to 3JS, and then we'll display it here. Models like these are used for clash detection. So if you're looking for things that shouldn't be, there's a wall out in the middle of a room, or pipes that are routed the wrong way. That's what people do with this. They can mark it up. They can send it along through workflows and things like that. With other models, we have got a simple house here. These are always fun to play with and just spin around and zoom around. It's quite powerful. You can do measurements and see how long things are and use those for creating other documents from the system. And my personal favorite here is we'll take any type of really standard CAD drawings. If you'd like to see a cow and what that looks like, you can load that up. And really, I think it was for about 25 different models in 3D. And for those of you that love your dark theme, we don't want to leave you out. So I'll flip that over, and you'll see we have dark theme. Very simple to do with the Uno platform, and it's literally just a theming switch for us. As long as we maintain the right colors in it, it's very trivial for us to do it. It's just a single line of code that did that switch. So not to be left out, we're talking about the web here, and this ultimately is built as a UWP app. That's what really we create. It's just Uno does all that awesome work with the technology they have to bring it to the web. We have the very same app running here in UWP. So there is your same good old cow in dark theme, and you'll see it's near pixel perfect in most aspects. Sometimes you're dealing with the browser DOM, so there are a few differences, but for the most part, it's nearly identical. And I will say Kahua doesn't do anything different when we're building this UWP app. We write the XAML, and we write it once, and that is it. And it just comes out looking like this on the other side. And it's extremely stable. It's been a long time working with Uno, and I'll say we don't have stability issues. A lot of it's from Uno, excellent work, as well as Microsoft and what the Mono team, the WASM teams are doing. It's a joy to just work with this, and literally it just works. And the last thing before I hop over back to my presentation, get my light theme back. I'm always partial to the light theme, but the dark theme has its purposes. So that is it for here. I'll handle definitely some Q&A seems to be coming in. So we'll get to that in a second. Getting back to my presentation, want to just cover a couple higher or just more important lessons learned. Definitely we're trailblazing some things as we move along. A lot of the issues we hit early on went from Uno down over to Microsoft to address. A lot of things dealing with size. There were, again, stability has been awesome, but we found some edge cases. They got those fixed really quickly. It's great to see the cadence of things. I mean, we'd enter an issue, and sometimes the same day there'd be a resolution and new code committed. But something that's very important with this is that when you're working with it, there's the interpreted mode, which if you don't do any acceleration of AOT, and I'll get to my third point there, you're running interpreted, so that's just literally the interpreted runtime. It's not native WebAssembly, so it's slower, but that has a benefit in that we can rapidly publish this. And with our continuous integration pipeline, we are able to make a code change and push it out in about 8 minutes for our QA teams to look at. Now it's slower. If we want the faster version, that's where we start doing AOT, do the ahead of time compilation, and there's a trade-off there, which is really the second point. is two trade-offs. One is the build times. It can be, if you do full AOT on our project, it takes about 3.5 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, just to get through the AOT and the linking. Long time, but it gives you the best bang for the buck if you want performance. But that comes at the trade-off of the size of what's generated. Everything that's been AOT'd fits in or is put in memory, and it can be quite large. Our interpreted build is about 22 megabytes in total, includes the .NET runtime, all of Uno, all of Kahua, includes that 1.5 million lines of code. Full-blown AOT is about, right now, I think compressed is 170 megabytes. And then when that uncompressed is in memory, that can be 350 plus. Too large, we don't use that. So we use a mix. We use something called profile guided AOT, so we can pick and choose what you want. And we do the hotspots. And then things that just don't need to be fast, we don't have to make them AOT, they can stay as interpreted. And lastly, because we're trailblazing some of these things, we're working with WASM, and the WASM current version does not have support for try catch, try finally. And what that means is if you need that, then it has to go from, if you're running AOT, it's going to go AOT to interpreted into JavaScript and then back just to run whatever it is you're trying to do in your try catch or your try finally, which is a performance hit. And if it's in a hot spot, it can be a significant performance hit. So you need to avoid using those. Some are okay. I mean, it's relatively quick in the grand scheme of things one time, but if you're doing 10,000 times and they all take a millisecond, you're going to be waiting for a bit. So you need to code around that right now. It's going to be fixed. There's a lot of activity on the spec. It looks like it's nearing finalization, and it'll be out in, I think it's out in one of the browsers now, an experimental stage. It'll get finalized soon, and once it is, we can start, as long as the runtime and the mono team gets it incorporated, then we'll be able to use it as well. But in the meantime, got to avoid it. And I will mention it's very sneaky where try finally show up within C#. They're in there with usings, they're in there with for each, they're in there with method iterators. They're in a lot of different places. The framework itself uses it under the hood. So we have to avoid those. We do a lot of profiling. What you can do, because the tooling is great, is in the browser itself, you can take our AOT build and you can just literally, it's standard, start the profiler, do some things, stop it, and analyze it, and it will show you where those transition occurred. So I work with Jerome a lot on that, and we get to those hotspots and remove them. And I will tell you, even over the last month or two, we have made significant strides where we can get our views in WASM. They load in about an average of 1.5 seconds, 1.7 seconds. Which is near the speed that we get in WPF and UWP. They're only a couple hundred milliseconds off, which is fantastic. When we started this a year ago, it could be 17 to 18 seconds to get things going. And that was really because nobody'd ever optimized, spent a lot of time doing it. One thing here I wanted to point out, I have WinUI, book 3 there, it's all of WinUI and the Windows Community Toolkit. This is a selection of the controls that we use. We use all of them. There's more, and because we're native and because all we do is reference the NuGet packages, we're able to pull down the latest and incorporate it. We love not having a lot of dependencies. Our WPF app has somewhere between 10 and 12 kind of external components, and what happens is things are either out of date, there's issues, we got to contact vendors. We don't have to do that here. One, there really aren't any issues. What we've seen is very clean, but it's just one source. And so when things come out, we can incorporate it, we can test it, and we can, if we like it and it works for us, we just go with it. And that, just want to point out that with the Uno platform powering our native web, we've met all of our objectives, really surpassed them. We started out thinking just like traditionally web's always been slower with JavaScript being kind of the primary language. And we know because we tried many times over the years to have a JavaScript post that it's just slower. But we're extremely pleased with the performance. We're extremely pleased with how everything has turned out because we literally just build a UWP app. On the side here, we have a UWP app full blown, could be released. And we also have it on the web. WASM works 100%. Everything that's in UWP shows up in WASM. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Colin. It's so cool to see how just the XAML written ones can go so far and all of the benefits from that. Like you said, Jerome is also here from the Uno platform for answering any questions. So I think that'll take us to Q&A. So if everybody wants to unmute and turn their video on, I can get us into together mode and we can get started. Maybe I can get us into together mode. Or we can stay like a grid. That works too.
Yep. I just want to start filling some questions. The 3D viewer was what I showed, with had the cow, the house, the towers. The 3D viewer is actually rendering 3JS for us. So what we do is we take those CAD drawings and they are transformed, whatever the native format is, into 3JS, and then we render that. And in the browser, that's just 3JS. The browsers can render that natively. So that's the 3D geometry, and that gets displayed. So we use that, and then we have a markup layer on top of that. That's where the kind of gets back into the WinUI into the XAML, because then we can overlay panels for people to highlight boxes. Or in 3D, they love to do 3D things, which we let them draw it, and we can attach things and tag it on there.
Oops, Savoy, I don't quite hear you. Am I the only one?
Better now?
Better now.
Gotta love having multiple mute buttons. Awesome. Thanks, Colin, for being so on top of the Q&A here. Yeah, we've got a healthy spread of questions for everyone. Let's jump right into another one for our guest, Colin, here. Colin, we have someone asking, have you had any compatibility issues or behavior issues with your with browsers?
We have not. We had one bug report of Firefox that ended up being a JavaScript issue outside of everything that we're doing. Outside of that, our QA team, we run with Firefox, we run with Edge, running Chrome, Chrome itself, and Safari. Zero issues. And that's contributed to by there's the WebAssembly spec. Everybody has followed it very well. I think everybody's very motivated to keep it that way. And then also on the Uno platform side of things, they do heavy testing as well. And everything they build, it works across the board with those browsers. And so we have not had any. We've not had to worry about it, which is a big change from doing things 15, 20 years ago, where you'd have to run things many times to go find the gotchas and do shims. So nope, haven't had any issues.
Awesome. All right. I've got more for you, but let me bounce it around the room a little bit, because I see we also have Scott with us. Scott, here's a question I'll toss your way. Are there any plans to improve error reporting in C#? We have Rick saying, more often than not, I get unclear error messages when something goes wrong, and I have to resort to turning parts of XAML on and off to find the culprit. Catastrophic failure is still one of my favorites.
You're muted, Scott.
Scott, you're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Savoy. Yeah, Rick, that is a definite regression from the previous UWP debugging experience, and I think this might have come up on a previous community call. We know that it's painful. We know that when you have a XAML parse issue, it just pops all the way up to a very opaque exception that applications start. It's completely unactionable. And then we also know that when we have crashes in native code in, say, Microsoft UI XAML DLL, that those two are not accompanied by useful stack information. H results that are originated deep in native code are also not being propagated up as debuggable moments that provide a diagnostic that might lead you to a fix. So all of that we are aware of. We're working on that, and we hope to have something in by the final 1.0 release.
That's awesome. Real quick, Gabby, we have people in the chat saying they'd love to see closed captioning turned on, if that's a switch you're able to flip conveniently for us here.
Let's see. Might be able to see some live captions.
All right, I can keep pressing ahead with the Q&A, because I know YouTube does also provide their own closed captioning options, I believe. All right, let's see. While we've got you, Scott, another question I'll toss your way. When can we expect WinUI 3 desktop app solutions that can target .NET 6? Would like to reference my EF Core projects that are in .NET 6 preview. Thanks. And that's from, yeah, gonna skip that one.
Yeah, Tugger, I assume is the first name.
Yep.
Yeah, we're working on that. We are currently validating the stack up and down, WinUI, the WinApp SDK, C#WinRT, all the components. My My recommendation would be that if you're willing to try it, then please do. And then if you find issues, you can enter them. It's not supported yet, but it certainly will be. Of course it will be. I can't speak to timing on that, but I can say that the work is in progress at this moment.
Fabulous. All right, Ryan, a question for you, since it's unusual to have not gotten to you already in one of our calls. Ghost is pointing out that WebView 2 was removed from WinUI 2.7.0 pre-release, the latest, and is wondering when it will come back.
Yeah, I was hoping, I was like, had my fingers and toes crossed that maybe I could make it through a call without answering a question, but that's fine. I'm happy for you to keep them coming. So on WebView 2, yeah, there's nothing to read into that. Basically, we in our latest pre-release, we detected a regression in WebView 2. We had to pull it because it was blocking store certification for some folks. We're going to reintroduce it in the next pre-release. That shouldn't be interpreted as like WebView 2 is going away from WinUI 2 or anything like that. It was just a temporary thing, a little speed bump. So we'll get it back in.
Awesome. All right, and yeah, Abby, one more tweak. If together mode is an option for that call, for this call, that might be awesome. Because I think we're missing Scott's video on the live stream. He's kind of covered by your presentation.
I saw that. I was
in the
trying
corner
to
there.
pop up together mode before.
They've changed the location.
Having
I think
some...
it's in the top left now. But we can, yeah, either way, move on with the Q&A, and if it's something we can get figured out here, just be a nice little bonus. All right, speaking of Scott, another question for him. WinUI 3.0 desktop being a part of MAUI, when will CLI commands be supported? I still get errors using .NET build plus .NET run.
Yeah, and I see that too. I just experimented with that locally and saw an issue with building the WAP proj for a C# blank app. I would suggest that you simply open an issue on the Windows App SDK public repo. I don't know what your specific issues are or symptoms are. Otherwise, I would open that issue myself. But most likely, that's what we're seeing. .NET build and run are going to work best with pure managed projects, SDK style projects. If you're pulling in, if you have a reference to any part of the Windows SDK, if you've got a VCX proj that's part of your solution, anything like that will certainly fail to build. It's not intended for that. Assuming you're not doing that and you just have a managed app that you're trying to build and run, that seems to me that should be workable. We should be able to support that. So I would suggest Pinox that you just open an issue on the public repo.
Awesome. Jumping back to our guest Colin here for a moment. Colin, what are your plans for your current WPF host?
So our current plan is to maintain it for at least through 2022. We're going to see how things the usage of the web host and how it goes. We expect it's probably going to be very popular. And we'll take a look at the end of the year. We're going to look at both where things are usage-wise, but also technology-wise. We're going to move to .NET 6. We're going to do that definitely for WasmGear when it gets released. And then we're going to look at potentially doing it for WPF if we want to keep it, or we'll just transition to UWP because, again, we have a full-blown UWP app. We may just, Windows 11 in the store might just be something that we can easily get out to all of our customers. And then we'd love it because then we just have one host solution.
Fabulous. All right, before we let Ryan get too far and let him think he's off the hook here, Ryan, Cybrosys is asking, I've been going over the Figma Toolkit 2.6, Microsoft Teams UI Kit, and other information related to the Fluent Design System, but WinUI 3 is lacking a bit in support. What are your plans with WinUI 3 in order to better support the Fluent Design System and have developers follow it?
Great. I'll answer that, and I want to combine that answer with a couple other questions that I've seen. I saw a question about somebody asking when Mica is going to be, the Mica material is going to be available. I saw another question that somebody was asking about when the bread car control will be available. So these are all sort of related to like the whole design differences or lack of differences as well between WinUI 2 and 3. So here's the summary. First of all, the Fluent Design System is meant to be technology agnostic in some sense. So WinUI 2 and WinUI 3 are both going to embody the Fluent design system, and we're going to try and keep them pretty much in lockstep. They're not in lockstep right now. That's a temporary thing, and there's always going to be like maybe a little bit of a difference because we might have a WinUI 2 release and then a 3 release that happens like a month later, and so there might be like a 1 month of very small amount of difference. But right now there's a fair bit of difference. We are currently in the process right now of porting basically all of the stuff that we released in 2.6, which is a pretty big release with like a lot of new styles and controls. We're porting that over to 3, and so you're going to see that as soon as we get that port done. I think that port is likely to span both the 1.0 release, and some of it will probably spill to after 1.0, like a 1.1 release. But I would say the lion's share of it right now looks like it's on track to release in our Q4 WinUI 3 release as a part of the WinApp SDK 1.0. So you'll see those things show up pretty soon.
Awesome. All right. You just took 3 questions in one, so you deserve a break, Ryan. I'll come back to Colin. Colin, this is a great question. How do you analyze performance and find the AOT interpreter issues?
Okay, so that I was talking about a little briefly. What you need to do is get it. You can. The fastest way is literally just hand timing if you know where it is. But if you don't know where it is, you got to figure out through the Chrome or really IE with Chrome profiler. And so when you start that, what it'll do is start capturing metrics and do your work. And I will stress with what we do, got to keep your sample size small because the amount of data you get is incredible. Jerome knows this as well. You can capture millions of data points in just 5 seconds, and then you got to sift through it. So you got to isolate your changes, profile isolating changes quickly, get that up on screen. If I had one, I don't. It takes 15 minutes to generate it for ours. But you then take a look at those call stacks, and you're looking for what's good is the tool natively just shows you hotspots of things you have and to see what's going on. But then it's color coded for the different types of operations that are occurring. And from what we've seen, yellow and red are always bad. But we go through that and we just refine things. A lot of things are very subtle on what's going on. It could be something like I was talking about with the try catches, try finalies. But it could be that there's excessive executions going on just because of maybe too many notify property change type things. So we got to analyze it and remove it and then just kind of iterate through the process. And it's great to see. It's always very rewarding when you literally get 20-30% speed ups by just fixing either an AOT issue or the simplest one we ever had is 1 line of code. We just moved it underneath another one and voila, significant performance boost. But it all comes from profiling, just kind of the hard work of figuring out what's going on, analyzing it, and resolving it.
Fabulous answer, Colin. Let's come to our friends at Uno. Just got a question for you. Excited to have one. Our friend Jeremy Sinclair is asking, how much of a performance increase have you seen with targeting .NET 6?
Well, thanks, Jeremy. So .NET 6 has been particularly interesting with all the performance improvements that have been made during the .NET 5 and .NET 6 timeframes, and especially with regards to all the common collections like dictionary, for instance. Moving from the .NET 5 to .NET 6 dictionary, in some cases, we could grab a 15 to 20% improvement just because of the fact that there's all sorts of strict references and all the C# new features that have been added recently that were added to those controls. So definitely large improvements in some areas. With regard to WebAssembly, it depends. As Colin was mentioning, depending on the path that you're taking, the fact that some of the patterns that have been added use try families, try catches, then it can go down in some cases. But in general, .NET 5 and .NET 6 have been improving the performance pretty significantly.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I see Ryan is taking some questions in chat here. Ryan, you actually might be... Oh, no, I do have one more for Colin so far. Since we're actually doing great on questions, let me make a pitch real quick to the community and say if you have more questions for the team or the guests, please let us know in chat. We're super excited to have Colin here with us, as well as Jerome, who's joining us from Inventive's Uno platform. So love your questions for guests, but can jump to one for Colin right now. Colin, what is the UI framework here? Someone's asking if it's Angular / jQuery or something more, and that's coming from Lance McCarthy.
Oh, it is so much more. It is WinUI, Windows Toolkit, native XAML. So we have our, I was showing it starts as a UWP application, and we're referencing those from NuGet packages. So we build native XAML for UWP. We bring in WinUI, we bring in the Windows Toolkit. And as I was showing dashboards, we did have a little bit of sync fusion there. And that is it. So that is the framework. And it's the Uno platform that's bringing it to the web. So we build that UWP app. Their platform is what can take that and has the entire runtime that powers things for on the mono.net side, and then does everything for us. We don't have anything where we're doing any the JavaScript rendering. There's no Angular, there's no React, there's nothing of the sort. It's pure WebAssembly running a native UWP application.
Awesome. All right, Ryan, some questions for you, and then I see I got some more in chat to pull over here. Yes, WinUI 2.7, Mikhail asks, isn't 3 supposed to replace 2.x?
Yeah, there's a long story that I could tell about that, but maybe it's not a good expenditure of time on the call. But I will say, probably if I could get in a time machine, I'd almost go back and maybe reconsider what the idea of calling what we're doing WinUI 3. Originally, it was sort of intended to just be like a drop-in replacement of WinUI 2. That's how it started. It's evolved quite a bit over time, and it's also sharpened its focus basically exclusively at Win32 apps right now, and all of the types of apps that the Windows App SDK is focusing on. So you can think of them as a little bit different. There are a lot of similarities there. Obviously, WinUI 3 is more focused on Win32 apps, and it's also not as mature as WinUI 2 because WinUI 2 and that full stack that it's built on is almost a decade old, whereas WinUI 3 is much, much newer. And so they're going to continue to exist side by side for a while, and I don't think that they're strictly a drop-in replacement. We're hopeful that eventually down the road, the investment level that we need to do in WinUI 2 will drop down to a much smaller amount, and then primarily we'll be telling everyone to use WinUI 3. Right now, there's good reasons to use both side by side, and so you could think of them as sort of two options.
Awesome. All right. Well, Ryan, more questions for you while we've got you. We have a few folks asking about when certain issues will see resolution here, and I see you had some comments to share there.
Sorry, was that me? I missed it. I was reading the chat.
Oh yeah, sorry. That was at you. Just on the subject of a few folks, I think this was maybe from our GitHub post, asking about specific time frame for issue resolution. I saw you had a comment to make there.
Oh, maybe I'm sorry. I think I'm drawing a blank on what that was.
No worries. I've got it on hand. Just wanted to share thank you to everyone in our community for the patience. We're catching up on triage due to several team members being on vacation for the summer. So we can't offer specific ETI on issue fixes all around yet, but we'll continue to get to them as soon as possible. Man, Ryan, I just can't give you a break for a moment here.
No worries, but I won't be able to get to the chat while I'm answering these. I can only do one thing at a time, so I will try and get to the chat. I know there's a lot of questions about open source. I'll get to those, Morton and everyone. Thanks. Go ahead, Zoe.
No worries. Maybe someone has a special talent they can share to buy you some time.
Juggling or something.
Maybe that joke was it. There was your chance. Luke Spacewalker, that's a great name, is asking when a media element will be supported. And is there any workaround on how to display videos currently in WinUI 3.0 applications?
We don't have a specific time frame for media element or media player element. I'll go and push that a little bit, since media element is kind of like older school, and media player element, even in the WinUI 2 UWP XAML stack, was the one we generally recommend people use. But we don't have a time frame for bringing those in. We're currently planning 1.1 and 1.2, and I would say early planning and trying to sort of project out what's going to happen there. So they might fall into one of those buckets. So that's going through a planning process now of how we prioritize there. A workaround is a good question. So one of the workarounds that we've recommended to people and they sometimes use is to put a WebView 2 in where you want the media to be played. That's going to increase your memory consumption, so it's not a perfect workaround. But it's pretty easy to drop one in. And of course, if you drop in WebView 2, then you can use something like a video tag to play your media, and you get all the transport controls that are built into the web engine that underlies Edge. And so it's a pretty straightforward drop-in replacement if you're just sort of looking for like, hey, I want to go show a video and maybe even have some playback controls. And we know a few people who've been doing that. That seems to be working for most.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. All right. So many more here for you. Quick nudge to all the folks here joining us on our call to continue looking over the questions coming in, and feel free to wave me down if I've missed something that was written to you. So next, I'll bug Ryan with. Let's see. Oh, maybe actually be towards the bottom of it here. I knew there was one more. Ghost is asking, when can WinUI 3? When can we use WinUI 3 in an unpackaged app? Hoping to see a date.
So we are trying to get unpackaged support in and stable for our 1.0 release. I would say that is coming in quite hot. And there's quite a lot of debate about what we should do about it, whether or not we should slip it to 1.1 or whether or not we should sort of ship it, and it might not be completely bug free, and then we go and like try and fix it in a stability release, like a servicing release shortly after. I'm sort of a proponent of the latter because I know that people really want that unpackaged support. So I would say I don't know. I'm sort of bullish on these things sometimes. Sometimes I'm overly bullish, like on open source. But I'm hopeful that we'll get it in this year. We'll see how it goes. We are straining as hard as we can to get that in for 1.0 in Q4.
Awesome. All right. Well, go ahead.
If I could just jump on to Ryan's comment there is work underway for adding fit and finish for unpackaged support. But if that did come in late, then it is still possible to ship an unpackaged app today by manually adding the dynamic dependencies bootstrap initialization call to your C++ or C# main startup path. So, and those are public samples. The Windows App SDK samples repo demonstrates how to do that. So that is an option if we do come in a bit late on that. As I say, it really just comes down to fit and finish so that you can create an unpackaged app and then just simply add a NuGet reference and you get that support automatically. But it doesn't mean that you can't ship today with that unpackaged support.
Awesome. All right. Well, I see a few questions for Miguel, who I'm afraid couldn't join us this morning. So hopefully we can get to these on the next call. Let's see. I'll encourage the team to take a look at some of our backlog questions, just in case there's anything anyone wanted to jump on answering here while we look at the last few that just came in. It's unusual for us to make it this far in. So if anyone entered last-minute questions in here, don't worry, we're still taking a look at them. But we might consider wrapping up Q&A a little early this time, unless anyone has something more to ask. Suppose this is also an open invite for the team here on the call with me to just jump in if there's something you spotted that you wanted to take a shot at talking about.
I'm looking them over right now, Savoy. Martin, I think you asked a question around when are we going to know the scope of WinApp SDK 1.1 and what's in WinUI 3 there. I think we'll probably know planning goes through, we're like any organization, goes through a lot of cycles. We sort of build a plan, we run it up to our directors and management. They may say, oh, please go focus on some other thing. And so then we have to refine the plan. I think so. There's like a seesaw that sort of happens, as we do planning, as we try and get things right. There's also just like a ton of stuff on the backlog. I think the chat proves that. It's like, when are we going to have media controls? When are we going to have open source? When, the list of things that we're trying to prioritize around. I love to call it job security. I think we've got years of work, literally, to go and do. We have some internal spreadsheets on tracking stuff, and they're like hundreds of items long. So I think we'll probably be done sort of seesawing and have a better sense of what 1.1 is probably. Sort of like end of November to December sort of time frame. We don't have a sense of it right now. Even I don't have a sense of it right now. I haven't yet even made a draft, but sort of in my head, not yet put to paper. I've got an idea about some things that we might want to go and do. And of course, another factor in that is there anything that was going to be done for 1.0 that spills over and then chews up 1.1 time? That's the other big question there. Like I mentioned on packages coming in really, really hot. Okay, if there's parts of that don't come in for 1.0, then that means they're going to spill into that bucket of resources that we have to go and do 1.1. So as soon as we know something, we'll definitely post it. We'll post it publicly. We'll talk about it at the community call. Feel free to keep asking since we do these calls monthly. But when we've got something, I'm happy to share it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. See. Yep, I just let folks know to chat that we have a few leftover questions here, and anything we didn't get to is likely just a matter of missing the right team member on the call to answer it. So, of course, you're always welcome to post it to our GitHub. We do have a special issue template for discussions or questions. Otherwise, we can hope to get to some of these leftover questions on the next call. With that, unless anyone saw... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with that, unless anyone saw any questions that they wanted to take a shot at here, I can turn it over to Gabby to close out our call.
Love the silence. Awesome. Thanks, Savoy. And thanks, everyone, for being here, answering all those questions. Colin, was great for you to join us, as well as Jerome. And I'm really excited for the upcoming WinUI 3 Preview 1 and the Windows App SDK release, as well as the WinUI 2.7 releases. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And thanks for your patience, as there's a few technology and Gabby road bumps for this first community call. But it was awesome to have a great demo and things to share. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you next month. We're looking at October 20th. All right, thanks. Bye.